So welcome, Ben Adams, also known as GMGN, short for Good Morning, Good Night. My guest here on my second Island Time with Wahine. He's a very talented DJ producer who has released tracks on Midnight Riot, Black Riot, Soul Clap Records, Robsoul Records, Sundries. He also hosts a radio show on The Face Radio out of Brooklyn, and as well as some other doing events and that sort of thing, which we'll get into in a little bit. But thank you for being here, Ben.
Thank you so much for having me.
Everybody go check out The Face Radio. It's a really great station, and Ben's show is fantastic. And he was kind enough to have me as guest about a month ago. Which was
great. That was a great mix. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. Such a good show. So I kind of want to wind things back a little bit. A lot of the audience for the show is in the UK, and so they'll probably be interested in knowing, and they may actually hear a little bit of your accent, but they might be interested in knowing that you're originally from the UK, but now call Boston home. So when did that transition happen, and how do you feel like those different places have influenced your sound?
Sure, yeah, I know I have this horrible hybrid Boston British accent now, which it varies like depending on who I'm with and what I'm doing.
Sure.
So when I talk to my parents, it's like way one way, or I'm with my friends, it's the other way. But so I originally moved to Boston when I was 14.
Okay.
So I think I went to middle school for about 3 weeks before starting high school. So that was a fun little crash course. So. Musically at the time, I guess it was an interesting time because you're kind of still developing that sound, but I was kind of too young to really go out and experience the clubbing culture in the UK before moving here. So, when I came here, I was very much into like kind of that big beat sound. So like Chemical Brothers, Fatboy Slim, Prodigy, like that's kind of where my love of electronic music was born.
Okay.
And when I moved here, it was very much, I think I fell in love with hip hop. Initially, I think that was the music that was biggest here, and people weren't really into electronic music, especially in Boston. They weren't too much. It was very much it was still an underground thing. So, my fascination with hip hop kind of led me into the production world and kind of seeing, I'm hearing all these samples. I'm hearing that in dance music too, and I started kind of putting two and two together. All right, well, a Daft Punk doing the same thing as someone like J.Phlip, someone is doing over here too, and you start realizing, all right, this is different formulas, and the end game is different, but they're using the same kind of techniques. So
sure.
I very quickly became obsessed with digging samples and trying to find out where this music came from, where it was made.
Was that before you were DJing, or?
Long before I was DJing, yeah. So here it was still very much just at a passion stage where I was obsessed with music. I love music, like most people, but it was just something I loved and try to submerge myself in as much as possible. I didn't really start getting serious about DJing and music production until maybe 4 or 5 years later. I actually went to, I had one night in particular actually, which kind of stands out as kind of being a life-changing experience for me. I must have been maybe 21, 22 at the time. So went down to New York City and I saw the Chemical Brothers live in this old theater in New York. Just something I kind of built it up for a long time. So I finally got to see them live, and it was just this unbelievable experience, and probably still to this day, probably one of the best live shows I've ever seen. And I remember walking out of that and just being disappointed that it was over and thinking, you know what, I wish I could do this. I wish I could be involved in this. And, I decided right there on the spot, it's like, you know what, why can't you? If you dedicate yourself to something and you put the time and energy into it, you can make anything happen. So from that day, I just kind of dedicated myself to music, and every single day I spent trying to learn something, maxed out my credit cards, bought a ton of gear, and just kind of went for it and just didn't look back. And that kind of just set me on my path of DJing and music production.
Was there one, take me back to that show. Was there one song in particular or something that happened in that setting that you were just like, okay, mind blown?
I mean, maybe it was the acid, maybe it was the music. Maybe it was a combination of the both, but I think the visual show was excellent. It was, so just seeing the visuals, seeing it with the music. And again, I'd hyped it up so much inside my head, but this is going to be such a game-changing moment for me. And then the fact that it actually fulfilled it. Yeah. And then also, going to see an amazing show and then walking out and then being in New York City at 2:00 in the morning, it's just like, what a place to be when you're on that type of a high too. So it's just, I want to keep this going. And even though that album,
keep riding this train.
I know. It's like, you got to see these live events. So I'm just turning my mic down in case it's coming in a little bit hot. You go to these live events and you get these natural highs, and it kind of it fills you with this energy and this creative juices, and I just wanted to find a way to harbor that going forward. So I mean, even though it wasn't
had you
maybe
been
not their best
twiddling
album,
knobs a little bit before you had gone to the show? It sounds like you had this interest in music production. Like for me, I didn't even really understand what music production was until like very much later. I always loved music, of course, but I didn't really understand that was a job.
I had bought some like really cheap music software. I can't remember what it was called now, but it's very much just like sample
Fruity
pack
Loops
based
or something.
It wasn't even that advanced. It was I'd hate to even put down Fruity Loops, but it was very, very basic. So I just started kind of dabbling in it a little bit. It was terrible and made some horrible music. But after that, that's when I think
that's how it starts.
It does start, but then for me, I was like, on the financial side of things, when I make a financial commitment, that's what really kind of forces me to stay with it. So that's when I actually was like, you know what, I'm finding out what's the best software I can get. All right, this thing called Ableton. All right, let me buy it on the credit card. Let's do it. So I have Ableton. I have no idea what I'm doing. It's such an overwhelming piece of software when you first get it. But
yes,
once I've made that commitment to myself, it's like, you know what, I better learn how to use this, because I just dropped, I forget how much it was at the time. And I think that was Live 6, maybe, I think at the time.
I was going to ask what version that was, just to give us a little bit of, idea of a time frame for when that was.
Yeah, so I think it was Live 6, and then I probably didn't get really comfortable with it until Live 7, and then every other iteration since then, it just gets better and better, and you get more and more comfortable with it.
What was there anybody who kind of held your hand through that? Or are you completely like self-taught? Was there as much YouTube tutorial information out there at that time?
100% YouTube and self-taught. Like I just didn't know anyone really who was also making music, and I was still relatively young and still making connections and meeting people. So most people I know just weren't that interested in it, and DJing was seen as this fantasy world which no one really understood. It's like, it sounds fantastic. You see someone at a club like, oh, that's amazing, but I have no idea what it is. And so it was more about just kind of slowly learning, getting my confidence. But YouTube, and I think there's a couple other, I think maybe it was called the Sonic Academy. There was a few different like online tutorial places where I subscribed to, and again, making that financial investment kind of forcing me to be involved. And there's just so many fantastic resources out there. Once you start looking for them and understanding, they're actually there if you kind of look around for them. And
then it's overwhelming, especially at this point. There's so many, and it's like, okay, well, which one of these like speaks to me and is motivating to me?
It's also hard, the way my brain works too. Like I'll start watching a tutorial and I'll learn something new, and I'll instantly have to stop it and just dive into it versus actually finishing the rest of the tutorial. So I'm probably like, all right, I probably should have watched the whole 15-minute video where I just take the first minute. I'm like, too late, I'm gone. It's like, that's it.
No, I'm kind of like that too, because otherwise it's like, wait, where was that button? I know. I got to get back there. I have to go institute it at that moment.
Plus, I mean, when you're into this, and the learning is really exciting too. So when you learn something new and you're like, oh, that's game changing. Like, that's how you sidechain? Fuck me, let's go. Like that's it. And I spend like 4 hours sidechaining everything. Like, what if I sidechain a clap? What if I sidechain a snare? A hi-hat? And there's on and on and on. It's like, oh, maybe I should have learned what all those parameters were on this on the compressor before I actually went in this. But too late. I'm already in it.
So it sounds like you were producing first, and then DJing came second, or did it all kind of come at the same time?
Probably DJing a little bit first. I bought my first setup, and then I started to realize that producing could actually be a really valuable tool for DJing too. And I think that, again, I think also learning to DJ and learning to produce at the same time is also, there's a lot of crossover too. So you start to understand the formulas of music and what works in a DJing setting, what doesn't work, and that kind of became part of my production process too. So it's like, all right, I need these clean intros, these clean outros, because I suck at mixing. So this will make my life really easy going into it. And
so did you start like doing edits, or were you trying to make original stuff from the gate? Like, what were those early influences? Who were you emulating? Like,
probably, I think initially I started making a lot of bootleg remixes. I think the time when I was starting to get really deep into making music was right around the Bloghouse era. So like being on the hype machine was a big deal, like finding all these right blogs. So taking popular songs, making Bloghouse friendly remixes of them was kind of the way to get your foot in the door. So like getting the #1 on the hype machine was a really big deal at the time. So like that was kind of like my initial focus, and getting other DJs to play your music was just, I realized early on, like that's kind of the biggest thrill. I mean, it's exciting to play your own music, but to walk into a club and someone else is playing something that you made, like there's nothing really tops that. And I think ever since then, I've always been trying to achieve that, like, how else can you get into people's ears and their heads? And so
which is actually how we kind of
the editing and remixing side before going full on.
That's actually kind of how we met, right? So if I think back to it, I had done my first Wahine's Hideaway with the Funk District as my headliner. And the song of the night was your track, Africa Man. And my husband had shot video of it. And like even days later, people were asking me about it. And then I posted it and I tagged you. And then because we hadn't had any interaction prior to that. And then, so that was our first interaction. So like, what was it to know that's Fernando from Mexico was playing it in Atlanta? Like, what was that?
It's that those are the moments you kind of crave and you live for. It's just when you make a piece of music. I mean, there was a remix of Coco, this great Afro band from New York. Like the original is just ace. So like to be able to remix a track which is already just fantastic to start with, and then just kind of made it a little bit more dancey, a little bit more fun for the dance floor, and to then make these connections across the country, across the world, that's the power of music. And what's great, like that label, the guy who runs a label, Justin Studebaker Hawk, who runs Peace and Rhythm Records. He knows the
homie. Everybody go look it up. Peace and Rhythm Records.
Go look him up.
Fantastic.
He knows the Funk District too. So like again, he already knew him anyway. So he's like, wait, he was playing one of these tracks, and again, it just starts this kind of big circle of like, wait, this person or that. Sorry, wait, what's going on? Atlanta's stuff that's going on right now, and it's like, damn, and it's like, I need to go to Atlanta.
Yes, you do. Sometime soon, hopefully, when the world figures itself out.
I know it's kind of depressing, but I mean, like those are the moments you live for, man. Like when people, like producers that you love, are playing your music, and I never talked to him before. I never sent him that track. I don't think Justin's into the track, so I don't know how he found it. But like again, it's just when those little things happen, it's like you feel like this giant world is really a smaller place, and it kind of makes you. It's like now I can hit him up and be like, hey, dude, thanks for playing my track. That was a great video, and that made my week.
Yeah, absolutely. So I looked at your website and there's a tagline on there. It says, my house is a disco. No, yes, my house is a disco. My disco is a house. Mm-hmm. Can you expand on what that means for you?
A couple of things. I think there was some Blockhouse song where I had that as a catchy little line in it where I just kept repeating it over again. I was like, that's such a great phrase. But again, I think it's just my love of house music, love of disco music, the fact that they're so intertwined in each other, and one is so important to the other. I think obviously disco is the original, and without house music it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
But I think I just love the fact that those two worlds combine. And again, I think a lot of what I enjoy when I'm DJing is showing people music they maybe have overlooked or didn't really think they knew they liked before. So I think you can show lovers of house music these old disco records and it gets them on board, or you can show disco heads these house music records and kind of cross them over. So I think I just love the fact that these two genres they work so well together. And as a DJ, I'm also looking to kind of I like to move across genres too, keep things interesting too. So I just like the fact that those two worlds can be combined into one. Yeah.
So when did house and disco come into your musical to kind of dominate your musical world? Sounds like you were into hip hop for a while. You were into big beat when you were in the UK, and then when did those influences come in?
Yeah, I think probably the most cliche answer, but it's the truth. It's those two French robots, Daft Punk. I think I became obsessed with Homework, and then Discovery after that too. But starting to really understand how they made those tracks, and starting to then kind of dig back and I'm like, wait, that wasn't actually their original song. That's a sample from somebody else, and then you start realizing, all right, I need to learn more about this person. And I start digging into those records. And then at the same time, I'm seeing that in hip hop too. I'm like, oh, that Jay-Z track has that sample in it. And then you start digging and he's like, oh man, this is all coming from the same place. And it's crazy. This music is 30, 40 years ago, 40 years old, and it still sounds so fresh and so fun. And like, I just need to know more about it. And I really knew nothing about disco music at the time too. So like I was coming at it with completely fresh eyes and fresh ears. And like, there's just such a massive world to discover. And then slowly, there was actually one party in Boston at the time called Disconnection, which was run by this guy, Serge Gainsbourg. It was every Tuesday night and just straight disco. And I used to just go there, sit in the corner, have my phone out, just taking notes. I'm like, all right, I need to dig on this one. I need to find this track and this track. And again, just once you can find like one or two people who
I
are
didn't
expert in
realize Serge
DJing
Gainsbourg
this.
was in Boston.
Yeah. So I mean, he put out this fantastic compilation a couple of years ago, Boston Does Disco, which is kind of a compilation of just Boston old school disco acts. So well worth checking that out. I think it was on
I am going to look for that.
Yeah, well worth checking out. But his going to his party every week and just kind of soaking up everything he had to
was
offer.
an education.
Oh yeah, I mean, free education and just sit in the corner, drink my margarita, listen to some disco music, and have a ball. And just again, that was so exciting to think, but this exists in Boston. Like, I can't believe this isn't more hype. Like, this is kind of exactly what I've been looking for. Like, it's not about like the flashy DJs or flashing lights. It's just about the music and learning something new and kind of carefree environment. So I mean, I love that stuff.
Was that in an actual club or was it more of a loungy listening?
Yeah, it was. It was in a club. It's in the Middlesex Lounge, which is in Cambridge, it's still probably one of the better spots in Cambridge for the nightlife scene here.
Okay, this is great because I was going to ask. Like, I love learning about everybody's different scene. I haven't been to Boston, so I haven't partied in Boston. Like, if I was in Boston for the week, where would you take me? Where does everybody need to go?
So first thing I do is I put you in an Uber and say, all right, let's go to Cambridge. So I'm going to the next city over, so Cambridge is right next to Boston, but that's where my favorite clubs are. There's a little stretch. It's called, the region's called Central Square.
Okay.
So there's the Middlesex Lounge, which probably has one of the longer running bigger house nights up until COVID. Then there's a Phoenix Landing, which is a small little pub which has a great house night there called Reset. Also the longest running drum and bass night I think in the US called Elements on Thursday nights. And then there's the Middle East, which is where we hosted our Grassfed Disco party. So there's like these three little clubs in this small little space. It's pretty rare in the Boston area that they actually give you freedom with programming music. So usually on a Friday and Saturday night, you're going to have the same kind of top 40 hip hop type sounds in most places in Boston. So that was the thing I love about Cambridge. You give a little bit more creative freedom out there to actually do what you want and play your own sound. So
why do you think that is? Is it college town? Like, what's going on there that you think?
It is. I mean, it's just easy that way too. I mean, it's an old formula that's always worked. So it's like, I can walk past the venue and whine about the fact that I'm like, oh, it's just top 40 tonight, but there'll still be a line down the street. So it's hard to be like, hey, can I come in here and play disco? Like, no, we're all set with that. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for those type of parties where people come and request music, and it's more like a jukebox style DJ, not necessarily. You're not booking someone because all right, you've got great taste in music, and
yeah. So who's getting booked through these venues that you're going through? Like, give me a sense of the sound that's coming through that's popular there.
So I mean, I guess it's hard to answer that question. Yeah, but before, it's one of those venues has just actually started opening up again now and started throwing big parties there. So at the Middlesex, there's a new party called Keep On, which has been throwing some big parties. So in the last few weeks, they've had Ben UFO, the one McLean just playing there. What else they just said that was cool? Eli Escobar, Soul Clap,
nice.
Con, people like that. But again, the whole world seems to have kind of shifted a little bit too. So we're still in this phase right now, finding out where people are going to fall. Some places opened up again and starting to get back into their rhythm again. I'm personally still a little bit hesitant, still trying to figure out what to do. So
yeah,
our home base where we throw Grassfed Disco, they're now officially open, but they just announced yesterday that there's no entry unless you have proof of vaccine, which I'm cool with that, but a lot of people are very, very upset about that. So
yeah,
that's kind of kicked off a big kind of political debate, which is, I know that stuff has to happen and has to be talked about, but when you're trying to throw parties and have a good time, and it's just not the type of atmosphere you necessarily want to be walking into straight away.
Yeah.
And again, like when we throw parties, there's a lot of responsibility in that. You want to provide a safe space for people. You want people to be comfortable, and
absolutely.
I'm still not sure if we're at that comfort level yet. So
I'm just glad to hear that the venues that you were using or attending were still open, because our two main underground clubs are gone.
They're just done. Oh man, so depressing.
Yeah, so I need to find a new venue for Hideaway. But I'm glad we moved into talking about your event, because Ben's Grassfed Disco event was you were nominated best party back in 2019 for the Boston Music Awards. Is that right?
Back in the old days, yeah.
Seems like forever ago, right? So give us a sense of what a Grassfed Disco party is like and what that looks like and who's there.
So I think this is a group of me and my friends. We started this party maybe must be like 4 or 5 years ago now. The way things work in Boston, there's very much like a formula which most of the parties are doing. So you kind of have your 1 or 2 residents, and then they book an out of state or out of country act, some headline act, which is great, fantastic. So we get to see these headline DJs, but it's just a repeating cycle over and over again. So people actually within the city don't really have a place to play, or they don't have a platform to showcase their own sounds. It's just more about promoting
the important talent.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, hey, Horsemeat Disco's playing, hell yeah, I'm going. You know, but
me too.
But do we have some great disco acts in Boston? Yes, we do, but they don't get a chance to play. So we reach a stage. It's like, what, you can either complain about it, or you can leave, or you can do something about it, right? So we decided to do something about it. So we started this party. The focus was on booking Boston-based acts only. So we kind of put together a list of all the people we wanted to feature in the party and just started launching it. Kind of picked up momentum straight away. Then we started to realize, like, when you start kind of scratching the surface, there's so much talent bubbling in the city that you don't really come across. So many producers like myself are very antisocial. They don't necessarily get out there a lot too. So like they're just they're making music in their basement. They're not really doing much with it too. So we really wanted to make sure we created this open environment where people could come out, feel comfortable, and showcase their skills. And it kind of quickly started going and building momentum. And oftentimes I can look around at our party and be like, half this room has played this party at some point. Like just from people, like I have good friends who played their first ever DJ gig at this party. Or like.
So there's amazing community that you've built. It sounds like.
Yeah. Again, it's just that's such an important word too. It's community. Like for us to succeed in this, we need to work together, not against each other. So I think that was one of the biggest benefits of the party, and just trying to emphasize the point, like, hey, if you guys want to get involved in this party, come get involved. Like some of our initial members early on were just people who came to the party and just started helping breaking down, starting saying hello, become friends, and come help us and be on board. And I think that was kind of the motto of the party, and it kind of grew and it became a party that people kind of love to be involved in. So it started off, it was a bi-weekly, then we moved to monthly, and we're just kind of been in this hiatus right now, trying to figure out when to kick things back off again. I mean, I'd love to try and move things outdoors in this current climate, but Boston's not really a city with much outdoor space, unfortunately. So
you're not just converting every parking lot like Atlanta is.
No, Boston's not a very friendly city to the nightlife. I mean, it's a tough city. I mean, like, I don't know about, like, for us, like, last call is usually around 1:45, so 2 a.m. is when everything dies. We used to have the fantastic after hours club in Boston, which called Rise, which was my favorite club to play at and go to. But that unfortunately died maybe like 5 years ago now. But so like come 2 o'clock, everything kind of dies, and you kind of forced to just kind of go underground to find the next party.
So what was the very last Grassfed Disco? Who was there?
Oh, that's a good question.
Did you have any idea what was coming?
Not yet. Jeez, I don't even remember, to be honest. It's been that. The last party we threw was in March, I think, right before the lockdown, and even then we were still feeling a little uncertain. We did have the next party booked, and so I was excited about the next party. I knew the next guy we had booked this guy called Caserta, who's actually guy's based in LA right now, but he's ex-Boston, fantastic mixing engineer, producer. He does all the mixing for like Bosk and Soul Clap and Con. Like, he's a fantastic engineer. So he was our next party, and then like that was just around that time. We're like, you know what? I just don't think it's going to be safe to do it right now. So we've been on pause since March 2020, right? Yeah, 2020. Yeah.
So who else is sort of under the radar Boston talent that folks need to know about?
Other than GMGN, probably one I love to talk about it is Saucy Lady. So she's just fantastic artist, and shout out to her husband too. Yuki is just an unbelievable like musician too. But those two, I mean, if you check out anything Saucy Lady does, it's funky. She's got style. She's so talented, and like
And I've been playing your guys's It's Time.
Oh yeah, man, I was lucky enough to make a track with her too. That's kind of a highlight during lockdown. It's just she's definitely like one of the most exciting artists I think in Boston. And then I mean, otherwise, not bubbling on, but someone who's a big deal. I think people like Khan too, just been having an amazing run in the last year too with all his defective releases. And I mean, up until recent, Boston has this habit of like you get to a certain level, then you kind of have to move to New York to get to the next level. So Boston sometimes is known kind of like a stepping stone city, but there really is a lot of great talent here within our city. It's just kind of focusing and giving each other a chance to actually showcase their sounds.
Yeah, it's interesting to know that Caserta is from there originally, but is now in LA. I'm from LA originally, but even I feel, being in Atlanta, I feel like I need to leave the country for something to happen.
You got a few cool things in Atlanta though. I mean, I love Treasure Fingers. He's an awesome dude, and like it's tough.
No, there's a lot of talent here. It's just that in order, just like you said, we have to then go somewhere else to be appreciated and become the imported talent, right?
It's always fun. LA is one of those weird places where like people always outside of LA, they seem to always rave about it. Like we got to go to LA. That's where it's at. And then people in LA always seem to be complaining about LA. So it's like, I never know whether it's just like better in theory or whether it really is this amazing place where like
it's an amazing place. It's just there's a lot of competition. So
yeah,
honestly, if I was still in LA, I probably would not have come back to DJing a couple of years ago. Yeah,
just oversaturated.
Yeah, it's just too big, too much, too many.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, the outside we're like, I want to throw daytime parties. I wish we were in LA. Like, I want to do this.
I mean, no one knows how to throw a daytime party like LA. I do have to say that. And I'm actually going home in about a week, so hopefully
awesome.
I'll catch some of those vibes.
Catch some good sunshine.
It's incredibly humid here in Atlanta, so doing the outdoor thing is great. But man, it's hot.
Yeah, we got the same problem here too. Just the weather's miserable like 9 months of the year. We have like this sweet spot like in the fall and the spring where it's perfect, but otherwise I'm like, why do I live in Boston?
Yeah, same here. So switching gears a little bit, tell us about the Face Radio and your show on it, which is fantastic. Kind of how you got hooked up with them. Any advice you have for people who DJs, producers who are interested in getting into the radio game? Because I think your show is, really successful. Good.
Sure. Thank
presentation
you.
Music.
Thank you so much. So I've been listening to the Face Radio off and on for a few years because Andy Yamhu, who runs Midnight Riot, has a show there, and FSQ has a show there too. So I'd always been listening to the station. When I saw the guy who runs it, this guy called Curtis, put out a post on social media saying, "Hey, we're looking for new DJs. Anyone interested?" So I was like, "Yeah, why not?" Without really thinking about it too much.
Had you done radio previously?
No, absolutely not at all. No, it's just I was like, "Oh, how different is it to DJing, right? Like I like playing music. It's fine." Little did I know it's very different, but
tell us how.
So I talked to Curtis on the phone. It happened to be, even though the Face Radio is a Brooklyn-based, mostly funk, soul, disco focused radio station. Curtis happens to be also British, now living in New York too. We both happen to have an obsession with the same football team. So I got talking to him on the phone, just instantly, I was like, "Oh, I love this guy."
I had a feeling there were some other UK connections going on there. How I sensed that, but
also, like again, like whenever, even from booking people on Grassfed, for collaborating with people in the studio, like whatever it is, the most important thing to me is they have to be a good person. Like I want to be working with good people because you're going to invest your time and energy with it. It's so important to be doing it with people that you value and want to be around. So just from talking to Curtis, I instantly could tell, I'm like, this is a really good dude. So like, all right, so I'm on board. I'm going to do this. So we started this bi-weekly radio show in January. The things I found tricky is, one is the fact that it's permanent, right? So when I'm DJing in a nightclub, I can pick tracks and it's like no big deal if it's a bad track or a good track. Whereas like on the radio, I'm very much focused on like I'm picking music for the right reasons. Like I really want to showcase this song, this artist for a very specific reason. So I'm feeling much more permanent about my choices. So I'm very careful about what I play. And then also I hate hearing my own voice. So just hearing like doing the talk over is just like absolutely painful for me. So like just getting getting comfortable with that and like listening to my
Even
voice.
even
Like,
7 months in, you're not.
oh yeah, it just doesn't get any better. I'm like, oh, you know what? It's probably just the microphone. It's not me. No, but I'm still not comfortable with that. But again, you know what? I kind of like that uncomfortable feeling. I think sometimes when you put yourself in those situations, it can kind of keep you focused, kind of force you to do better. So I kind of like being in that situation. So maybe at some point in the next year, I'll get more comfortable with it. But we'll see. I mean, initially, because of COVID, I've been recording and broadcasting from Boston, where eventually I'll just be doing the shows live from Brooklyn because I have a great little studio down there. So I'm still in the process of evolving this show. So I think in the next month or two, I'm going to find the next step and the next stage in the show and how I want to approach it. And it's it's exciting because it's great to be able to play music in a different format where, when you're in a nightclub, you can play a track and sometimes I just want to, when I play back to back with someone, I'll be talking to the next DJ, like, oh, this track is by this guy. You should check out this guy. We're like, she's yelling at a club and he's just like, yeah, whatever. I'm playing the next song. It's like now in a radio format, you can actually, we can talk about this. Like this is this producer right here.
Yeah.
You got to check this guy out. This is Pontchartrain. He's from Detroit. Now he's in New York. He's amazing editor. You got to check out his other tracks and you can kind of actually talk about the artist and give them some love. So I like that side of it a lot.
Nice. So what are you thinking about for this? You've got, the rest of the year. It sounds like things may be changing up a little bit once you get into the actual studio space, like future guests. What should we expect?
I've been going back and forth. So like as a DJ, I've always thought my biggest skill set is being able to blend two records together. That's what I'm best at, and what I enjoy the most too. Like finding record A, mixing it with record B, and finding that sweet spot where it kind of creates this scene,
new thing,
a new sound. Like that excites me.
Yep.
So it's weird to move away from that, but I really want to get into this format of like having guest DJs and forcing them to play a record and stop and then tell me why they play that record. Like I really like to get into the mindset of why. So I'd love to have guests come in and be like, all right, pick 8, 9 records. You're gonna play them. It's gonna stop and you're gonna tell me about them. I want to know why you picked those 8 records. They don't need to mix together. They don't need to be seamless. I just want to know why you picked those records and just kind of get into the digging side of things because it's.
What do you stand for musically and why?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think with DJing, it's become, with technology, anyone can learn to DJ, but taste, that's something that takes a lot of years to hone. And that's really the skill set, right? Like I don't care if someone train wrecks in a club. If you're playing unique and interesting music, like that's what I'm there for. Show me something interesting. I don't want to hear the same Beatport top 100 tracks. I want to hear something that means something to you. And that's what I'm kind of looking for. If I can do that in a radio format, even though I'm giving up the blending side of things, I think that's kind of where the show will eventually go to.
Interesting. Okay, cool. I'm here for it. Can't wait to hear this next iteration.
I'm going to have to get you down in Brooklyn too. I'm going to have to figure out a good road trip. And
I would love it.
Put you on the spot to pick those records.
I would love it. Hopefully soon. If I would look through your catalog and it looks like you've been releasing tracks for at least 10 years now. Is that
man, old.
Correct assessment of things?
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for young producer Ben at this point, 10 years in?
That's an interesting question. I was actually just having a conversation with my friend Dustin about this the other day, just talking about like how I miss the innocence and the old me, just like not understanding the rules and how things work. I think there's something very exciting in the rawness and the uneducated side of a producer back
having the beginner's mind, as we like to call it in meditation, mindfulness meditation.
Exactly. So it's like now, like I'm making tracks where like I'll have a label reach out to me like, hey, we'd love to release a record with you. I'm like, oh, great, love that label. I'll then spend a month, 2 months, 3 months making music for them and just kind of get stuck in my head of just like reworking and making tracks. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll make 6, I'll make 7, I'll make 8 tracks. Whereas like then on day 1, I'll make a track and I'll send it to Ed Banger. Like, hey, Busy Peach, check out my track. Like now I'm like scared to like send it to anyone, So like this kind of like understanding the rules and the politics of releases and knowing how that works. I kind of miss that naiveness I had initially.
Sure.
Although also, obviously I know that, my music has grown too. And I think there's this weird cycle of releasing music where like I'm still in this stage where even 10 years in, every release I think is better than the last release because I'm just better at what I'm doing. So I'm always constantly learning new skills and becoming a better engineer. So it's weird where like I make a record, I sign it, and maybe it doesn't come out for 4 or 5 months, and by the time it comes out, I kind of hate it because it's 5 months 5 months old, the
Yeah.
5 months old Ben. Whereas like this Ben is it's much better, even though no one's gonna hear this music for another year too. So I'm always in this cycle of chasing myself to like get my music out. But I think I've just recently kind of come to understand I need to kind of let go of that and just stop overthinking things and just kind of be more free with what I'm doing, because
Yeah.
that's part of the process. And like uncertainty, like that's just part of it. You just kind of embrace it. And again,
The happy accidents.
yeah, exactly. It's tough to keep that in the kind of forefront of your mind and not get too overwhelmed by things sometimes, especially when you're working with labels that like I hold them up so high. So I'm like, all right, I gotta make sure this is the best thing I've ever done. And if I'm not feeling like that, I just start to overwork things and overthink things. And it's weird. Like maybe right now I probably have a backlog of maybe 10 to 15 tracks that I've made, which no one's heard yet. Like not even my friends. I just kind of sit on and just keep reworking and reworking. And I owe so many people music, but I'm just kind of sitting on it and just working on it and just trying to improve my craft little by little. And hopefully eventually just kind of release into the world. But
So when do you decide, like, where do you draw the line? You're like, okay, this is ready for me to hand off to somebody else.
I don't know. That's like one of the hardest things to learn. It's like learning to let go. It's like you could probably work on a piece of music for forever and still not be completely satisfied. But maybe that probably just ties more into like my skill level. I think with making music, it's like some of the best tracks I've made is stuff that it took me like 2 to 3 days to make. It just happens. It's just like you're just in the zone and it's just everything's working. It just flies. When you have other stuff which you rework and you spend months on it, and that's at this stage I need to realize like if I've already spent 2 months on it, it's probably not worth investing any more time into it. It's probably just not the one that I'm looking for. So I think learning when to let go is such a key skill set, which I probably don't have down just yet, but I'm still trying to get there. But
sure.
Probably
So
what
are those? Give me a few of those tracks that like really came together easily and within a few days.
Yeah, like I mean, for example, like the Kokolo Africa Memory mix. That was one that just like boom, just sat down. Like sometimes I'm just in the zone when I'm making music, and like this one came together so quickly, and it's like maybe I was like maybe this is too quick. This is probably happening too easily for me. But I've also come to realize that like when I'm in those zones, it's so important to try and stay in them and just stay as focused as possible, because no matter how much time I set aside for music, I'm never going to be guaranteed to be in that zone. Like yeah. I tend to think of it like sometimes I'm just like I could give myself 2 weeks to make music, but if I'm just not feeling it's nothing's going to happen. Whereas if I'm in that zone, I need to make sure I just don't leave the studio. Like stay here for 3 days straight. Like that's what it takes. Just do it, because like you just never know when things are going to be flowing like this. So I think making sure when I'm in that zone to stay in the studio. That's probably like one of the most important things I've learned.
Okay. So what have you been doing to stay productive during this kind of strange time?
Yeah, it's tricky. I think I've realized more during the lockdown how much of my inspiration came from being in actual nightclubs, from DJing, from experiencing other people playing music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm always digging for music, so that's never really changed. And the radio shows forced me to be constantly digging, listening to promos all the time. So that hasn't changed during COVID. And I'm definitely inspired by listening to what my friends are making and what other producers are making. But being out and feeling the music, I've realized that like I've really, really missed that. So I have spent a ton of time in the studio. I mean, maybe that's what I'm waiting for with releasing this music. Maybe I need to be able to road test it more and just be able to actually play it again and just see crowds' reactions. Like, all right, that works, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things I'm like, I've been very active studio wise during lockdown, but again, maybe that's why I kind of been piling things up, because I'm kind of waiting for that moment to get back out there again. Yeah.
It's hard to be kind of in your little bubble making all of these things, but you don't have any feedback of is this going to move the crowd, which, I think is a major goal of ours.
Even with like live streaming too, like I've had some really fun live streaming gigs, and it's always great to connect with people and chat and stuff. And definitely it's better than nothing, but you still miss that element of just being able to see people and feel the reactions. And like, it's just something that can't be replicated. Plus, I mean, I hate looking at myself on a screen. Like that's just for me, it's not DJing. It's like I want to be in a dark room. I want to be loud music. I want to feel the bass. I want to see the dance floor. I don't want to see
Yeah.
me standing in my living room.
Yeah, and just the the sonics of it, being surrounded by the music, is a different experience than a couple of speakers in your house.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just stuff like, again, because I'm always making music in front of the same studio monitors too, so I really need to hear them in different situations and different setups to be like, oh, you know what, that bass sounds like shit here in the club.
So where have you been testing in lieu of having a nightclub to test things in? What's been the alternative for you?
So I have a couple of different setups in my house, which I'll bounce between. I'll still always use the car setups. I mean, the car is always a great radio test for it too. Or if I'm now the things are getting a little bit better. I've been able to actually get together with friends again too, which is super nice. So just being able to hear them on their setups too. So trying to hear things in as many different environments as possible seems to be the closest thing I can get to that. But again, nothing competes with an actual big, proper, good sound system. But you can get the fixes wherever you can get them.
Yeah. So I think there's probably a fair amount of producers who are aspiring producers who are listening to this show. You've had great successes releasing on Midnight Riot, Black Riot, Soul Clap, very recognized, well-known labels. For anybody who might be looking to release on those labels, what tips would you give?
Good question. I could do some of those tips myself.
It's good to review these things for ourselves.
Yeah. I think when I've had the most success is when I have a game plan. So even though when I'm making music, I try to be very loose and just let things go where they go. But if I have myself a plan going into it, I'm like, you know what? I want to pitch a release to Midnight Riot. I want to make something that I know that Andy will dig. So I already know that, like, all right, I know where it needs to be stylistically. So let's just try and stay focused and stay within that style. So I think when I have an actual game plan about things, or
there's parameters to stay within.
Or like I know that, like when I did the Toucan Sound release, I know the type of sound that Robert digs. So like if I can aim for that and keep it in there, I know that I can put together a package which I think he'll dig, and kind of work that way. So again, by having those game plans, I have more success versus where like I just make music and I'm like, all right, well, who would dig this? Like, I mean, sure, you can get lucky like that sometimes. You're like, all right, maybe this will work that label or this label. But when I actually already know the label before I make the music, that's when I've had the most success. So I definitely suggest that as a big tip. Another one is work with other people. Collaboration that's probably one of the things I enjoy most about making music, especially when you're lucky enough to actually be able to do it in person. Because, regardless of anyone's skill set, I mean, I love working with people of all different skill levels, whether they're a brand new producer, whether they're way more experienced than I am. Having that energy in the room, you just never know which direction it's going to push you in. Like I have friends, like we both like, say, house music, but when we get together in a room, we end up making this weird, dark, ravey music. I don't know where this energy is coming from. Maybe we hate each other. I don't know where this energy is coming from, but like you just never know where that's going to take you. And I think collaborating and working with other people, you're constantly learning from other people and what they're doing too. Because with software like Ableton, there's usually like 4 or 5 ways to do everything. There's no right way or wrong way. It's just whichever way is you're most comfortable. So like I'll be sitting here with a friend and be like, you're doing it that way? That's strange. I never thought like that before. You can start being like, all right, maybe I should do that versus my boring copy and pasting technique. Or, you start realizing there's different ways to do stuff. So I think collaborating is a great way to capture that energy and also just do some learning too. And again, also, like I said in the very beginning, YouTube is fantastic for tutorials. Like spend time focusing on different areas. Like I guess I often just spend a week we're looking at something like compression. So I'll just spend a week just studying compression, just trying to learn that. There's so many valuable resources out there. So that, if you just spend the time and put the energy into learning, you can quickly make some quick gains too.
Yeah, I'm very, very new in this game, but I got myself an accountability partner. I made that, like you said, the financial investment in the software and everything. And just tracking the amount of time that I spend living in Ableton and investing in a few courses to kind of just keep me with a regular cadence. It's not about whether I feel like making anything. It's about you paid for this course and you need to show up at this time and just do it, and you're going to learn something. And yes, everything's going to suck in the beginning. Give you that.
And definitely also like never be afraid to ask questions from people too. You know, like I have
My
some,
dog wants to
oh,
say
the
hi.
dog. I won't bring my dogs here, it'll be chaos, but they like never be afraid to ask questions. I have people who randomly shoot me Ableton questions all the time. I'm always
Nice.
happy to take the time to stop and help because I love talking about this stuff. I'll talk about Ableton with you all day. So if you got a question, more than happy to help you with it, especially if it saves you some time because it's
Oh,
like
I love it.
if I can teach someone else something and it saves them time and they have like one of those like aha moments like that's fantastic. So like why not? So just never be afraid to actually reach out and ask someone too, because you never know. Someone will be willing to help you.
So what was a recent Ableton aha moment you had? Something that you're just like, oh, wow, this kind of changes everything.
Oh, it's a good one. So this Friday, I just got a brand new studio laptop, which changed everything for me. So I got a new beast in the studio. So I just spent the last like 2 days setting everything up, which is just an absolute nightmare. But I'm trying to think what would be. I think I like to buy a lot of new tools, so like a lot of new VSTs. So like I'm always looking and reading what other producers are using. You never know kind of what new tool could kind of improve your workflow. So I like to spend a lot of time just looking at what other producers use, especially out of the box stuff, because everything in Ableton is fantastic, but I already pretty much use most of that stuff anyway. So just any kind of outside of the box VST stuff which I don't use, I love kind of learning about that. I don't just buy everything. Like I also try to like if I buy something, I'll buy one thing and make sure I become an expert on that one thing. So you buy that one VST and just use that nonstop until you get very, very comfortable with it and use it to the max. Then get the next one. Like otherwise, you can spend thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But
so what was the last VST you bought?
Oh, good question. I bought the RC20, which is like a color FX tool, which kind of adds like this nice little. You can use it to add this nice little kind of spacey, kind of echoey stuff to your bus channels, which I like a lot too. At one point, I bought like this massive wave bundle where I have like 100 plus VSTs from them. So I'm also trying to go through and just make sure I use every single one of these too. So like there's like 50 different compressors which I've never used before, which I'm trying to go through and just kind of learn each one by those too. So again, just going through and like making sure if you got the tool, maybe you already have it, the one you're looking for anyway. So just kind of going through and using the ones you already have.
Right on. Well, we're sort of winding things down here as we come up on the hour. I want to switch gears into what I call Island Time Rapid Fire. So this is Island Time. You're marooned on an island. You get to pick it. Where would you want to be marooned?
I'm thinking somewhere off the coast of Mexico. I'm kind of obsessed. I'm obsessed with Mexico, so let's go there.
All right, I'm with you. You get to drag one collaborator with you. Who is it?
Oh, that's a good question.
Anybody. Alive, dead.
I would love. I mean, I guess going back to where I started too. I mean, I'd love the Chemical Brothers. Just give me one of them on an island. I just love to pick their brains. Just again, just because that's where I started. That's where my original love of dance music came from.
Right on. I love it. Okay, you get 2 DJs to drag with you to keep you inspired and moving. Who are they?
Oh, good question again too. Oh man, you put me on the spot. You normally be on an island. I have all this time to think about this. So my favorite DJs.
I always have problems with this question. I shouldn't throw it at other people.
Oh no, it's fine. I mean, I love.
Or like, who are you feeling like at this moment? It doesn't have to be like for all time.
I know. So I'm like choking on this question. So I'd be corny to answer your last guess, but I love Pontchartrain is someone who I'm a wee bit obsessed with.
Same.
Found it very hard to follow him too, but like I love a guy like that who he seems to have his finger on what's hot right now, but also very much on the past too. He's got this great mix of like old and new, which I really love, and his production is really sharp too. So like hearing someone like that DJ is just something. I mean, I can never get sick of. Maybe someone like DJ Harvey too, like just someone who's like again who plays in my wheelhouse, but a wide range of genres too. But like just again, something I can just kind of listen. Someone I can play for 7 hours and not get bored of.
Right on. Right on. Okay, last one. You get 3 albums to take with you. What are they?
Gotta be Homework. Daft Punk is probably just gotta be on there, just because again, it's just kind of a gateway to just loving that French scene and becoming obsessed with all those French producers.
Yep.
Then maybe Original Pirate Material by The Streets, just because that was maybe a year that came out maybe a year or two before I moved to the US. So it's just something about that time period and like that raw and grittiness of him producing all those tracks, and just it always kind of reminded me of home, and that's something I kind of miss. So I love that side of that album. I kind of still listen to it kind of religiously to this day, even though it's hip hop and a little bit garage and a little bit of everything really. And then maybe some MJ, Off the Wall probably too, just because I gotta have a little I gotta have a little fun on the island too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Good picks. Okay, so kind of the last question. I'm about manifesting things, so I like to give my guests opportunity to tell the world, because we never know who's listening, right? Tell the world who you would want to collaborate with, labels you want to be on, events you want to do, things you want to happen in the next year or two.
Yeah, I mean, so I think one of the goals I kind of gave myself at the beginning of the year was I wanted to get a few vinyl releases locked down. So as of this stage, I think I got 3 locked up for this upcoming year, which I'm pretty excited about.
Awesome.
So hopefully gonna get that Kokolo remix on 45 too at some point, which I'm excited about. But again, I think I have a few labels that I've been kind of idolizing for a long time, and I've been kind of working on this music for the past year. So I'm really just trying to get in their head over the next year if I can. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to getting back out there and partying again in a safe environment. I miss being around people. I miss the live dance music world. I'm sure we all do. I also just want to get back to traveling too. I mean, I was at the stage right before lockdown where I had some really cool opportunities coming up, and I just recently got to experience some different markets in the US, and then everything shut down again. So I really want to kind of get back out there again and make the effort that, like, hey, when I know somebody in DC, or I know someone in New York, or I know someone in X, I want to go there, want to meet those people, experience their music scene, and just start spreading the music as best as I can, because I think that's one of the things I enjoy the most, and it's just one of the things I just want to be able to experience that again.
Yeah, amen. Okay, last question. Where can folks find you? What should we be looking for next from you?
I hate to say social media, because I hate social media. I mean, it's just you can find me on Instagram. Yeah, Instagram. Facebook's so tedious. I mean, I know a lot of people have just kind of turned their back on it now. I still find it as being a necessity for throwing parties. Facebook event pages are still kind of a thing, unfortunately. But you can hit me up on Instagram, or
so it's at GMGN DJs. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So all my socials are at GMGN DJs, even though it's just one of me. But there could be 2 of us. You never know. There's not. There's just one. But
you sound like you're into collaborating, so.
Yeah, I'm always into collaborating. But yeah, and a website too, so gmgndjs.com too. So I usually put all my releases up on there too. But I like Instagram at the moment, just because at least it's. I definitely dig photography too, so like I find it's a good way to follow people that I really enjoy. So even though I don't post too much there, it's still a great way to connect and send messages too.
Right on. So
or SoundCloud. SoundCloud, old school, right? SoundCloud still exists.
Yes, they unfortunately bury the messaging feature, but
I did. Yeah, I know. It used to be so good. What have you been using so far for your mashups? Because I've been digging those.
Oh, what program I've been using?
Oh no, what are you trying to? Are you still using SoundCloud to share them? Like that, you're kind of your main focus.
That's my main thing. I mean, Mixcloud, I just can't get on board with. Just as a listener, it's frustrating to me. I can't get on board with. Plus, I look at like huge artists, and I'm like, you have 5 plays. What is the point of this platform?
Yeah, people. You find the extremes. People who put 0 effort into it, which is I'm in that category. Some people have invested in it for many years, and they do have a good following on there, and their software is good, and they do. I know on the licensing side of things, they're legit, but
yeah, I appreciate that.
The SoundCloud did have that community. It's easier to share tracks versus like actual sets, so like that's still kind of the go-to spot, I think. But just I remember the good old days where it was actually like a bubbling community. Now it's just kind of
Yeah. I mean, tomorrow it'll be a new thing, right?
It will, hopefully.
I don't know. I'm feeling spread a little thin between all these different platforms you've got to be on.
I know it's tough. I mean, Bandcamp's. I mean, I love buying music on Bandcamp. That's probably one of my go-tos. So like, I do a lot of my digging and research on other sites. Like I love Juno or TrackSource is really good. But then if and where I can, I'll save carts and then just go to Bandcamp and try and buy direct from artists if I can. So like, I still find that to be the best way to buy music.
I love Bandcamp, except the getting from track to track is wonky. Getting between albums, being like, if I wanted to listen to, so you find a great artist that you've never heard, you want to listen to all their stuff. I'm an internet startup person before my DJing career, so user experience that kind of stuff matters to me. It's frustrating.
Terrible. But like at least it makes you feel satisfied, right?
I would buy so much more music if I could get through it quicker.
I know, but at least you're like you'll feel satisfied afterwards. Like you're working really hard to get this person those $2.
There's a little bit of that digging aspect, right?
Yeah, exactly. They make you work hard for it in Bandcamp, but at least it's going like more of the money is going directly to the artist, which is a nice thing.
Absolutely.
But it's just, but in terms of promoting your music, it's maybe not so great.
I agree with that there. So speaking of promoting music, what do you have coming out next that we should be watching out for? Anything you can talk about?
No, I'm still, because the next few things are going to be on vinyl. The release date times are they're just all over the place because of the way things are locked down in COVID.
Yeah.
Hopefully a couple of remixes coming soon too, but again, I'm not too sure of the dates on those yet too. So super wishy-washy answer, but even more reason to just go to the Instagram, right? Just go.
Yeah, you'll be get the notification.
But or on the Face Radio too. I'll play some stuff on the Face Radio. So.
Yeah, definitely go find the Face Radio, folks. Definitely go seek out his remix of Africa Man originally by Kokolo. We've never discussed it, but I've seen you jumped in on the thread. Somebody was asking on Disco thread on Facebook for female talent. You brought me on the show. I know you had another female artist on right after me on your show. And so I just get this sense that you're a champion and an ally for us. And I want to say thank you. But I also want to ask why that matters to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, I hate that it even should matter, or like the fact that we even have to try hard, because it's an unfortunate nature of the beast, I guess, right? Like music it's very male oriented, and even in the Grassfed Disco crew that we have, it's 3 white dudes, and I'm very conscious of that all the time. And it's like, we're 3 white dudes, and we are lucky enough to be in this situation because of, we have an advantage over other people, and it's not fair. And there's so much talent out there. You just got to sometimes make the effort to highlight it, and sometimes you got to go a little bit further and to dig for that talent. But it's so much more worth it. We've had some fantastic female DJs at our party, and people I've never seen play anywhere else apart from our parties too. So it's like, I don't know why that is.
We're out here. Just dig a little.
Yeah, no shit. It's like to me, it shouldn't matter anything about the person. The sex, race, religion, nothing should matter apart from the music. But we need to work harder to make that an even playing field, because it's not happening right now. And it seems like there has been more of a push towards it over the last year or two, but I worry sometimes it's because people do it because it's trendy versus doing it for the right reason. And when you do things because it's trendy, it then may become untrendy, and people may kind of let off the gas a little bit, right? Whereas, why are people not pushing for more females in dance music right now? But some of my favorite DJs, people like Annie Mac, like Heidi, like some of these people who I've always looked up to just being great tastemakers. Those DJs are fantastic, and they should have the spotlight to be able to play just as much as anyone else should.
All right.
People like you. I mean, I love being able to meet other DJs who are passionate in skills too, and you definitely got the skills and the passion. So it's excited to see how you keep developing, keep making music.
Thank you. I'm gonna try. I just gotta keep at it. I recently did kind of a weekly. It actually was all female aspiring producers in this Zoom class. So it's a very, it's a different vibe. It feels like a safer space and a place where you can where we can be emotional about it and be excited and not be blasé or, kind of dumb things down, or the way that women react to things versus the way men react to things, or feeling like we can't ask questions. So that was nice, but it's kind of unfortunate at the same time that we have to separate ourselves, because we don't tend to be the ones who have all the connections. So then, okay, so she's making great music, but in this group, we're not the ones that have the connections to help her get it out there to a wider audience. Maybe, that's kind of unfortunate, but we do what we have to do. And I appreciate folks like you who don't have to, but choose to, give us a platform and give us that opportunity to get out there. Thank you. Thank you so much for being my second guest, for letting me pick your brain on the production front and telling us about the Boston scene, and wish you all the best and hope that we get to meet up in person sometime in the not too distant future.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk about music with people who love music. So it was as uncomfortable and awkward as I am. I enjoyed the conversation, and then we will meet in person. We'll make it happen, right? Like, it's just, I got a car.
And I'm going to be bugging you about Ableton.
No, you're more than welcome to. I'm always happy to help any way I can.
Awesome. Thank you.